Welcome to On the Table, a podcast about board games, card games, and tabletop war games.
What's going on?
Oh man, Josh, I'm glad you're here. I went into the House of the Undying, the Song of Ice and Fire Discord, and there were, I can't explain it, the things I saw.
Oh, slow down. What? Wait, hang on. Are we in an abandoned building?
We're in the House of the Undying, Josh. There's no time to explain. I'm just glad that you're here with me, Chase from On the Table Gaming, in episode 74 of the On the Table Gaming podcast. I think we're not alone. Shh, listen.
Those flip-flops?
It can only be one of two things, Josh. Either a warlock from the House of the Undying or Fabio Cury, the lead developer for A Song of Ice and Fire the miniatures game. And hopefully he's alone.
Hey guys, what are you doing in my house?
Oh, hey Fabio. Whew. I got scared for a second. I thought you weren't alone.
Oh, he's not.
Oh God, it's Michael Shinall, the lead game designer for A Song of Ice and Fire the miniatures game. So, is this a bad time to ask you guys, where are my dragons?
Seriously, guys?
I'm just kidding. Thanks for coming on the podcast. All right, with all that stuff out of the way, we're really excited for sort of this next wave of things coming out. Now, you guys have been sort of trickling out online some of the cards in the House Targaryen Hero Box 1, and it looks amazing. So we're hoping we could go through and talk about some of those cards and also maybe some of the design process and, kind of where Targaryens are headed.
Well, absolutely.
One of the things we're really excited about is we had the starter set, which was mostly focused on cavalry and sort of like lightly armored, fast-moving troops. But now we're seeing that identity for the faction evolving and becoming something else with the forthcoming Unsullied and some of the attachments that we've seen. Can you guys talk about that at all? Like what we can expect in the future?
So the Targaryens are going to see a lot of unexpected just kind of features coming along that army. It's going to be a very unique play style compared to any others. And I know I say that with pretty much every army, but it's been true so far. But you're going to see kind of something along the lines of like the free folk level of differences between the standard Westerosi army and what the Targaryens offer, because Daenerys's forces are just this giant hodgepodge of followers and different mercenary groups and just everyone that she could get behind her, not even just talking about the Dothraki hordes, but her own dragons, but the city of Meereen and everything beyond that. So you're going to see a lot of unique stuff. It's kind of hard to identify their solid playstyle because they've got a lot of options with them. But the general focus of the faction being, the hard-hitting, just kind of alpha strike, that is one of their primary tenets. But I don't actually want to say that's like their main thing because they do have a lot of variety to them. But if I had to say one thing, it would just be a lot of unique styles kind of mixed together. Each of their units is going to be very, I keep saying unique. I need to find a nice thesaurus. But it's going to be like individually powerful units that all do these individual things. So your army is not necessarily going to be cohesive in its tactics, but more confined to like this unit does this thing really well. This other unit does this unique, cool like thing, but maybe it doesn't synergize with anything except itself. So you're going to see a lot of play styles like that, and you can mix them together to like create like a full Unsullied army, for example. If you want like a tank army or the whole Dothraki, cavalry horde, you're going to see a lot of those style things where you can have these individually powerful pieces, but you could also choose the specific blocks that go together to form this cohesive style army.
It's so exciting when you get your hero box and we're just as guilty maybe as everybody else, and you're like, oh, like the starter set does this, and so this faction must be all about this. And then like the hero box comes out and you're like, oh, like actually the faction can do many things, and maybe even what you like assumed it did in the very beginning, like that's not even the main element. I don't know. We're in that kind of magical era here as we're finding out more stuff and the faction's growing. And you guys spoiled Grey Worm Commander on Facebook. And before we actually talk about him, how do you guys divide these up? Do you get to like pick favorites here? And you're like, oh man, like, I get Sir Barristan the Bold, and like everybody else gets like the leftovers. And how do you guys like figure out who's going to reveal what on Facebook? Is there like some, rocks, paper, scissors, shoot game going on?
Okay, so I'll be very honest. Some of them quite a fan of, and then I'll ask Michael like, "Oh, can I be the one?" But usually we just take turns, or uh, whenever it fits the whims of Michael.
I'm thinking too much into it. These are the hard-hitting questions the community wants to know, by the way. So glad to get that one in there.
Yeah, like I'd say Jack and Hagar is one that I specifically wanted to do, for example.
Oh, that's so cool.
Yeah, Barristan's one that I wanted to do, but really, like sometimes when it's deciding spoilers, it's almost like the randomized wheel of like, okay, we're gonna put up a spoiler today. What's it gonna be? Sure, Grey Worm. Why not? Let's do that.
So I went back actually because that's what I do. I went back and I looked at the CMON Expo 2019 footage in which you were first introducing the House Targaryen forces, and you were dropping like little hints, and I was trying to see like, oh, how do those like things line up with now? And you had talked about Barristan Selmy being kind of one of your favorite characters in the books. Does that kind of still hold true?
Yeah, he is. I mean, something I've come to realize about myself, and I don't know, I'm not a psychologist or a priest, so I couldn't answer these questions for you. But I've found that in my time, like with A Song of Ice and Fire, that for some reason I'm drawn toward like the old grizzled kind of bastard stereotype. Like
Yep.
Clint Eastwood and Gran Torino was one of my favorite movies and roles. And then you have Jorah Mormont, who's one of my favorite characters, and Barristan Selmy, who's one of my favorite characters. And there's this pattern that seems to keep emerging in this situation.
And they're written so well. I mean, Barristan Selmy also one of my favorite characters, and it's so exciting to finally have him be like on the horizon for being actually in the game. And it's, we'll get to him a little bit, but actually in the CMON panel, there was actually talk about Eric Lang was sort of joking that when he had saw it, he's like, oh, he was teasing you about whether or not the character was going to be OP in the game because you liked it. One of those like, employee teasing each other things. And I don't know. I don't think he came out OP, although he is very good. He's clearly very going to be very useful in this force.
Funny enough, there's more of a concern about the opposite happening than making them OP, because usually you tend to overcompensate because you know they're your favorite character, or a character that you like, so you tend to be a little more skittish about like, okay, am I making this guy too powerful because I really like him? So you tend to be more reserved. I think Fabio can actually talk about that a bit more, because with some of his characters, because he likes all the bad ones, like Stannis Baratheon and all that.
Hey,
Fabio, is this true? This is
yeah, he likes bad characters.
Oh no,
I'm on the Stannis camp, yeah, for sure. And honestly, I don't think I've overcompensated because, but it does happen, right? Because you're very worried, and then so I guess you spend a little bit extra time on them, on the ones that you like, and you try to make them just exactly the way you thought they're supposed to be. Obviously, this is a collaborative work,
right,
and everyone has fingers on everything, and also the numbers always speak louder, right? So of course, if something does feel like it's a little under par or over par, we always do adjust that. But it does happen like in subtle little things, but sometimes you'd use a unit with 8 attack dice, and you're like, okay, this is working, but let's make it 7 just to be safe, right? I'd rather release something that is not making it like gravitate the whole game around it.
Right. And I think, also it's been said many times on here, and I think you guys have been really good at pointing it out. Like, you guys design it, you develop it, and then you play test it and you polish it up. And it's not like it just goes, straight from your mind out into the game. Like there's a lot of actual like additional work that gets done.
It's really weird that yes, work is actually done on these things.
Hey, I don't know. I think it's weird for some people because they play the game and it's a game and it's fun, and they forget that it's not just you and your buddies sitting around being like, hey, what if? It's actually like, yeah, what if? And then like, let's run this through all the scenarios to see if it works.
We just got to call up George on speed dial. Like, listen, we got a brilliant idea here for something we're going to do. You're going to love it. Just imagine like any Wolf of Wall Street or like 80s style conversation, and that's basically how it is. We got the old Germ on speed dial there.
So you guys revealed Grey Worm, the Unsullied Commander, on Facebook. And Grey Worm has this ability, Boldness and Courage. When this unit makes a melee attack, it is always treated as having 1 additional rank. If it already has full ranks, it rolls +2 attack dice. And then he's got his tactics cards, Devastating Impact, which you guys showcased there, along with Refuse to Yield, which I think is a Brendan Tully card.
Yep, the Blackfish.
The Blackfish, and Forced March. Of course, I'm used to that being on Harma, so you can get your extra movement and then cut on a weakened token. So this guy is, distinctly a infantry commander, and it's going to be really interesting because we only have 1 infantry unit coming out. So this Unsullied Swords Masters. So I guess it makes sense to kind of put him there as an infantry. That's his home. When you had a army that is currently entirely cavalry, was there any concerns that you guys have in how you roll out, your infantry commander, like the unit selection process? Like, when you guys release your faction, do you have a certain way you want units to come out for them?
So there is actually, it's a little more complicated than that. So when we design factions, we usually design most of the initial units in one lot, and by initial units, we're talking about the first like 10 or so boxes, because you don't design just a starter box and that's it. You have to see how everything, including heroes and everything, is going to interact. So it's not like things are made. It's like, oh, we make 1 unit and that's the faction, and then we make another unit.
Right.
So we have the entire faction is pretty much well developed before anything is actually ever released. During this time, though, in that same process, things are being sculpted, art is being done, and those things are all variables onto where they're going to end up being finished, where they're going to end up in the approvals process. So while we have our dreamscape of like these are the things we want to see released and this is the order we want to see them in, other matters of production and graphics and things like that all come into the equation. That's actually something as to why we're moving to quarterly releases, starting with the Greyjoys, is that it gives us a little bit more control over how things are released. So the Greyjoys will be the first faction that is released with their the starter box, the hero box, and 2 or 3 additional unit boxes right upon release. So you're going to have instead of just having your starter box for a couple months and then another box and then a hero box, you're going to have a bunch of options available right as soon as the faction comes out.
I think that's going to be phenomenal too.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, that's one of the things that I think everyone wishes for, is like they have like a, like that full look at the faction up front. And I think that's going to be awesome when you guys start with that.
Although I think by now too, though, we have a little bit of padding in here with the neutral forces that make a lot of new armies much more viable. But I guess that's going to be an exponential factor now with the new release schedule.
So, Chase, should we talk about Belwas?
Let's do it.
All right, so this is actually one of my favorite characters from the book. So Belwas is a 2-point attachment. So his ability, Battle Scars. When this unit is attacked after the attack has been completed, place 1 order token on this card. This unit gains bonuses based on the number of order tokens. So 2+, so it's been attacked 2 times. The unit's melee attacks gain Vicious. 3+, the melee attacks gain Sundering. And 4+, this unit's melee attacks always roll 10 attack dice and cannot be affected by weakened tokens. So if you manage to get attacked 4 times and survive, you got a pretty huge bonus because those do stack.
If my OP raiders don't kill them, then they're going to be crushing me. OP in quotes there. Sarcasm quotes.
Yes.
Really interesting to see abilities that are kind of token based, and they build not off of like a faith token per se, but off of just like straight up being attacked. Is this something that we might expect to see as like a common Targaryen thing, or is this just like a mechanic that just exists in the game mechanics that we're kind of seeing more now for the first time, that it's just another way that units can interact?
I think this is just another mechanic, and it hasn't been heavily explored, and we can open paths by exploring this mechanic. But I think it's pretty intuitive. We're used to placing order tokens on cards already and removing them for effect. So placing them is just going the other way around. I guess it's pretty simple and straightforward. and there's no reason why we can't try that yet. And I'll also say that the Belwas, we still haven't seen the unit that he excels at.
You mean it's not the one unit available for infantry? Ah, interesting. Confirmed, guys. You heard it here. There will be future Targaryen infantry units besides the Swordmasters.
So I got to say, Chase, you've triggered me several times, and
Oh,
I've been
no.
letting you go. But I'm going to call you on it now. And this is just a general thing, because I understand that people like faction purity and all that, but you got a whole host of neutrals to factor into your army.
You are right,
and
actually. That's what I get for playing Free Folk too long.
It triggers me when people just ignore those as existing. And okay, I get it. There's some people that they don't want to play neutrals. They want to play their full, like, just pure army, and they do it for either their own gameplay reasons or for their own fluff and narrative reasons. But mechanically, you're ignoring a huge section of your army and the tools available to you if you're not factoring in neutrals.
Blackguards would be interesting with a Belwas in them.
See, there you go. There's a nice little combo for you there, which, right now your option would be Unsullied Swordmasters if you don't factor in the half dozen or so infantry options you have available in neutrals.
So that is definitely true. I have definitely in my mind, in my head canon, as we're talking about it, my head is thinking of not of our traditional Westeros mercenaries. Although we even have within the mercenary faction now House Bolton. We also have the Mummers. We've also got the Stormcrows. So there actually is a whole host of elements there. And then for Barristan Selmy, one of the coolest characters in the books. I'm in agreement with you, Michael, here. You were very persuasive before about your talk about your views on Stannis, but here you didn't need to even convince me. I'm on that same page. Barristan Selmy, advisor to the dragon. So wisdom of the old knight. He's an influence effect. And while influencing a unit, when that unit is targeted by an enemy ability or tactics card, you may remove this card from that unit to cancel the effect of that ability or that tactics card. Man, that's great. Now it's coming in at I think it's 4 points, so it's pricey. But when you're fielding those big unsullied units or other units, a little more expensive, giving that extra protection, that's definitely comes in handy. And it seems like in the hero box, and maybe I'm making an overgeneralization here, but it seems like we start to see some NCUs that are a little bit more defensive in nature, where it feels like a lot of the base starter set is about, your extra activations are like basically like helping to kill things, where now we're starting to see a little bit more of like, don't let me be killed. Is that another sort of like split or another sub theme of this faction that we're going to see develop?
Well, as stated, you have a bunch of individual kind of tools with the Targaryens that is not necessarily going to be like an overarching faction theme. Like, I can't sit there and go like, oh, these guys have a bunch of, for the Lannisters, you have control aspects, you've got defensive aspects, you have a couple offensive ones thrown in, but primarily Lannisters are all about control and manipulation. Starks are all about the charge and mobility and having effects that trigger when they're reduced down to their ranks. Night Watch are very elite units. You don't have anything that's like a clear, oh, this is what Targaryens do. It's really going to be much more of a unit for unit basis and a NCU to NCU to attachment basis. Like Belwas, that's not a play style like the Targaryens have, is like token generation. That's something Belwas does. With Barristan Selmy, yes, he's got his defensive means of what he can do with his influence effect. That's not a faction theme. That's just something he does. Zario Zanzala Zab whatever.
That's exactly how I pronounce it.
Yeah, he has his defensive. He's a defensive NCU. Again, not a faction theme. That's just something he does really well.
Man, so I've definitely felt like the lure of Targaryens here, and maybe that explains it. After playing Free Folk, and I'm like, Targaryens seem really cool too. That'd be like my other faction, maybe. And now I'm hearing you explain that like the basic concepts are somewhat in a way similar to the Free Folk being kind of like a hodgepodge of things. Maybe I just secretly like those sorts of armies.
Well, so even with Free Folk, you have for now, you have a horde mentality where you're going to want to run a lot of you're going to want to run a lot of guys. That's still a faction theme. The Targaryens, yeah, you have a bunch of offensive cards in their baseline tactics deck that benefit you from charging, but I don't even consider that a theme because, okay, every faction likes to charge if it has the option.
That's fair.
It was actually one of the design things when we were doing the Targaryens, and Fabio can attest to this more, is that if you look in their baseline tactics deck, they only have synergies with one zone, and that's the mobility and maneuver zone. Most of their other commanders or characters, they play out they that's where your secondary zone kind of affiliation is coming from. So if you're running like Dario Naharis and everything from the neutrals faction, you can synergize well into the wealth zone. If you're running some of the other commanders, they will have a focus on different areas, crown, tactics, whatever it may be. But that's again pushing into that direction that your individual commander and individual units are going to be shaping how that army functions. It's not going to be necessarily as cohesive as the other armies that you'd see in like Westeros or whatnot.
Man, this is really cool. And we're slowly working our way up to some of the really crazy stuff here. But we also have Zaro, Zoan, Daxos, Merchant Prince of Quarth. So he's got Wealth of the 13. It's an influence effect. And another one of those kind of more defensive, but it's when influencing a unit, each time that unit is attacked, automatically block one hit. If you control the wealth zone, automatically block D3 hits. So Mr. Moneybags here, maybe we could help your Belwas unit stay alive for a bit. And we don't know the cost on him, but that's going to be a pretty useful defensive NCU.
Yeah, I mean, it's sort of like the shield wall ability for Tully's, but there's no restriction on which angle you have to be attacked from. So it seems like it's going to be pretty good.
Yeah, it is zone dependent, but still, at least it's not in order, so it's not limited. It does have its advantages, yes, of course.
And so then you might maybe take him with some of your Storm Crows or some other neutrals that might want to build off the wealth zone.
Yeah, and honestly, I'd say there's now with the Hero Box, there's a lot of synergy with more infantry, and that means that you can have a core infantry surrounded by outriders, for example, and that starts opening up new options for the Targaryens as a whole.
Yeah. Going through a few more of these more quickly to get to the big boy that I really want to talk about here. Jorah Mormont, the Andal, and Jorah Mormont, the Penitent Betrayer. Both of these are attachments, but on the card it looks like they might be cavalry attachment.
So unfortunately, that is an issue that actually fell through on proofing there. On the reverse side of the card, they are correctly listed as infantry attachments, and obviously these guys are infantry attachments, namely by the lack of mounts and them being on 30mm bases. So that's unfortunately a typo on there that we will have errated when these guys get their official release date.
Okay, so those are definitely infantry attachments then. And so the Andal, he has an order, Stubborn Tenacity. When this unit passes a morale test, one enemy engaged with this unit suffers D3 wounds. And then the other one has the Bodyguard attachment. If another attachment in this unit would be destroyed, instead you may place that attachment in a friendly combat unit of its type within long range, ignoring the usual attachment restrictions. It's a really interesting mechanic. I mean, it makes sense to be advisor to someone like Daenerys Targaryen. Makes one maybe speculate. Maybe we'll see some other targets like that as a battlefield attachment.
Potentially.
Oh, okay. I don't know how we can read it. That someone's gonna have to run the on that and be like, reflection. Was there any? Michael's got a pretty good poker face, so that's the problem here. All right. So, let's see what else we got.
So we got Barristan Selmy, Barristan the Bold, Order Indomitable. When this unit passes a morale test, this unit may restore up to D3 wounds. And then Knightly Vow. Before deployment, select one enemy unit. Until the end of the game, this unit's melee attacks gain +1 to hit and roll +2 dice against that enemy. So that's sort of the same mechanic as the original Brienne, right? That's sort of targeting a specific unit.
It's the same effect, yes.
That's a really cool. I mean, I think it fits for him really well. And that morale test, I think that's going to be another. Depending on the morale of the unit, that could definitely add up over the course of it.
I like a lot of those like healing effects here. I think that's what I've been slowly being like hearing the sirens call of Renly and the Baratheon forces. Anytime I can get something that's going to help me restore a few wounds, that's always a plus in my book.
It's one of those things where it's like so annoying to play against when you almost killed something and then it comes back to life that you just, there's just like morale advantage of playing that. But then we got Grey Worm, order martial training. When this unit makes a melee attack, after attack dice are rolled, the defender becomes vulnerable. And then he's got Combat Master. This unit may always reroll its melee attack dice and may never become weakened.
So that's an interesting one too, especially considering the Sword Masters already don't take condition tokens. So maybe he can help lead other forces into battle as effectively.
I guess you probably put him in a unit of Unsullied, right, as opposed to a Swordsmaster. So because he would give them the reroll.
Unsullied are the Sword Masters.
Yeah.
Right. You wouldn't want to put him in the Unsullied, right? Because it's.
Yeah. You can reroll when engaged.
I mean, in the Sword Masters, you're going to be losing out the benefit of can't be weakened, and you're going to be rerolling your 2 pluses. The thing is, you do have.
Yeah, that's right. Hey, 2 pluses miss. I've rolled a lot of.
Actually, Jess, yeah, you're sorry.
I think my official Song of Ice and Fire dice are weighted.
I've definitely had like 1 rank raiders that are like, we're just never going anywhere. We're sticking around. Yeah, so it looks like he's going to help spread the love a little bit, get your other units a little bit better, give them a little bit of that Unsullied resolve,
Yeah, and that opens space for you to place other attachments in your Unsullieds if you want.
Yeah, that's the hard part, honestly. I mean, so what I've realized is that playing Free Folk has taught me a lot of really bad habits where I'm like, 3-point unit, yay! And then like, oh, look at this amazing attachment for 1 point. And then I'm looking at like another faction, like this is a 9-point unit. I'm just like, do you know how many raiders that is? That's like a month. That's a month of painting to field that unit. So it's been really hard, picking what's going to go in my Unsullied Sword Masters.
Yeah, I think that the thing is, whatever you place on them, you just turn them up to 11, and they
in
really
points
excel.
Or in, I gotcha.
In both, yeah, I guess.
Was that delivered? Is there like this is Spinal Tap connection with the Unsullied? Oh, but it does definitely turn them up to 11. All right, now the craziest thing, all right, and this is what's like I literally could hear like people's heads exploding when this was revealed. Pyat Pri, the Warlock of Karth, I'll say it right this time. House of the Undying, place the House of Undying Tactics Zone next to the tactics boards. You're adding a new zone to the board. A new zone. It acts as an additional tactics zone for all purposes. If Pyat claims that zone, you may add +1 to the die roll for its effect. So you're going to roll on a chart on this zone. And the crazy thing is that this isn't like a replace effect. This is an entirely new zone. What? And so the zone, if you claim it, anybody can claim the zone. And if you do, you roll a d6. On a 1, your opponent discards their hand of tactics cards and then may place up to 2 condition tokens on one of your combat units. So they lose their hand in exchange for getting to put out 2 condition tokens on your units, meaning that if you have like Unsullied, you can be like, yeah, I don't really care. At 2 through 5, your opponent discards the top 2 cards of their tactics decks, just right to the discard pile. Adios. And then on a 6, search your tactics deck for 1 tactics card and place it in your hand and shuffle your deck. You must then roll again. What? This is so mind-boggling. Like, you basically like hear the rules of the game and you're like, forget the rules. We're bringing a whole new game. This is amazing.
The first thing I thought of here was the European meta is so obsessed with the 3 NCUs. So this opens it up so those mirror matches where it's 3 NCUs on 3 NCUs, there are actually going to be enough spots for for all.
Does this mean you could do 4 NCUs? Could you do? I don't know.
As a limit chase.
Just crazy. Man. Now, was this something like a mechanic that you always knew you wanted to do, that you're going to always expand the tactics board?
Now, come on. If we said something like that, that would be hardcore spoilers. We can't show our entire hands.
Oh, wait, what? Oh, interesting. Man, I don't know. You guys, just the way. So basically, it's like I think you made like it got to be like every few months something comes out where I'm just like, this is so crazy. It like adds like a whole new dimension. You guys keep one upping yourself, and I don't know. This is just going to be so interesting because the 5 zones on the tactics board. That is it's been such a constant since the game's been out, and now to have that just being able to shift, like I don't even know like how does that influence the game? Like, I mean, I can theory craft here, but it just seems like it throws everything I know out the window with this new variable, and it's going to be fascinating to like unpack.
I'm sure you guys can't answer the question, but are there tactics cards that benefit from having control of House of the Undying?
Won't answer.
The the last guy who asked that ended up in the house of the actual dying. I mean, I don't know, but it seems like you could have like unlimited possibilities.
I think
Jeez.
it's really cool, and I do like that when you roll a 6, you do roll again too. So you can potentially, tutor for any card in your deck, and then also have them discard their whole hand, or mill too. That's pretty good.
And if you use Mr. Pre, then you actually do that on a 5+. So
Is that how he's referred to? Mr. Pre, is that the official terminology? Professor Pre or something? It's a Mr. Hey, Mr.
Yeah, sure, Big Daddy Pre, whatever.
Big Daddy Pre in the House of the Dying. I mean, he does come with his own tactics zone, so I guess he gets to be called like whatever he wants.
That makes
Yeah,
sense.
this is his house.
Oh, it's his house. Yeah, it's my house. Oh my gosh, this is you guys have just opened up the doors to all sorts of things, especially from like our more creative community members that love to make their own fan-made stuff for the game. We're going to be seeing, zones for everything. Castle Rock or this or that, or your mama's house, or it's just going to be, whatever that cave from some season in a show or something. You're like, okay, but this is something I'm really excited to play with, just to see, really how it shifts things up. Because I mean, all the other zones are still going to be so valuable, but at the same, and this is like such a gamble, it's such a risk. But at the same time, I don't want my opponent to take it.
Yes.
So one of the things we're seeing a bit more, maybe it's just the way the last 2 releases were. I'm trying to think of what's his name now. Is it Andrew Estermont, I think. So the way the releases have been, and I think maybe just because of the way the last release came out, Andrew Estermont, these ideas of being able to, add in more mechanics that like, deal with cards in drawing cards or discarding cards, especially. That seems to be becoming like a larger part of the game. Is that just kind of the way these releases are coming, and it was always part of the baked in kit of A Song of Ice and Fire? Or is that something that maybe is being leaned into a little bit more deliberately?
So I guess we can go back to what Michael said before, that we usually do approximately the first 10 boxes when we initially design a faction. So you can like sort of count still and see that this was all initially planned.
Gotcha. It's so interesting, especially the way the meta like ebbs and flows, and some Night's Watch players like really are like doubling down on the like get all the cards in my hand sort of game, and to see now these kind of other ways to make that a little more risky and to have some threats to that is really fascinating.
It's there's always going to be tools that counter things. And it's just, as time goes on, you're going to see more releases and more things that just kind of work in that area. It's one of those like there's so many different elements that can be done from a design standpoint. It's one of those weird things. I don't know, I'm gonna say weird, but it's one of those topics. Whenever we do something or you release something, people seem, and you even actually mentioned this earlier in the episode here, Chase. when new things come out, you ask, is this going to be incorporated into like core mechanics of the game, or is this going to be
Right.
a one-time thing or a faction thing? That concept always kind of, not that it doesn't sit right with me, but it's always just strange to me that people put themselves in that limited mindset of thinking that something will only appear as a one of, or if it does A, it's never going to do B and never going to do C. Whereas you never know when things are going to show up. Uh, I know some people, they go, oh, you guys are repeating tactics cards or abilities or whatnot, and yes, when it's appropriate, because you don't want to have just every single thing in the game be fully unique. Not that that's a bad design standpoint. That's just a choice that some games do, that they want every single power on every single guy to be fully unique. But that's going to end up just being really bloated over time. If you've got something that exists and works and it's thematic, and mechanically, it fits what you're trying to do, then you don't need to make something new.
Honestly, we take flavor into consideration a lot. And so when we repeat abilities, we really want to show resemblances between characters as well, right? This is pretty, we take a lot of time to make these decisions. It's not like out of the blue, let me see, sudden charge goes to this guy. No, like we don't roulette them.
Is there out of the heroes we discussed here, is there one that if you were gonna like, I know you guys are always like working on the next thing, and that when stuff comes out, like it's already been like worked on and it's so far in the past. But is there anything here that you would like stop and be like, you know what, like I think we kind of deserve a pat on the back for like how well a job we did with X? Or is there a particular character or attachment or unit in this box that you feel kind of really proud of?
If you're talking about Targaryen specifically, I actually, the first one that comes to my mind would be actually Belwas. Just the representation of taking how he functions as a character in the books. Like, oh, he's got his battle scars and he always lets his opponent get the first cut and everything. Taking that and just incorporating that into his effects. Yeah, that's the first one that came to my mind.
Yeah, you nailed it with that. Like, that is like 100% the fluff and mechanics together there.
Agreed.
How about you, Fabio? Similar answer, or is there a particular character in the Targaryen Hero Box that you're like, man, yeah, like I feel like we really captured the element, or you're proud of?
I do like Grey Worm, but I think I really enjoy Barristan Selmy, but just a different version of him, which is soon to be.
What? We're getting more teasers here. After all, we're not done feasting, and you're already. I see how it is. Okay, fair enough. Well, yeah, I think this is going to be a big game changer. I know people are so excited. And the funny thing is, it's always dragons. I was not expecting this House on the Undying card. That is such a cool curveball. I'm sure dragons will also blow me away, but this is something I couldn't have even fathomed. Like, it's one of those things you didn't know you wanted, and now that it's in the game, you're like, oh, this is going to be really cool.
Well, I think it's just whenever there's like when it pushes the outside envelope of the game, right? That's always super interesting. It's like possibilities shift, and you start thinking about, well, what else could happen. So I think it's awesome to see.
I think maybe speaking to that point you made earlier, Michael, it's like a lot of times people can kind of confine their view to like this narrow box. But I think in a lot of ways, like, you sit down and like, here are the rules of the game, and you assume that like there's certain parameters, certain boundaries that everything's going to operate within. And the danger is that if you leave those rules, if you go outside the box, that it might like imbalance or break the game. Like, that's why the rules are there. And yet when you guys are doing it, like, you're showing that, hey, look, like, yes, we're going outside the rules because the rules are way bigger, and it still works and it's still balanced. Like, that's kind of the crazy thing. And I'm looking forward to having my mind blown, in the future as well. I feel like you guys are always coming out with cool stuff, but yeah. Or it's like, this is the kind of thing that, to be frank, is going to be like the community will probably be divided about, and they'll be like, oh, it's over, too powerful or too weak or whatever. And then like in a few months, they'll be like, oh no, it works as intended and it's fine. We just can't
That's
wrap our mind around.
always the best. When you have two posts on Facebook with one saying OP and right under it, the other one saying that it's too weak. And then you know you did your job right.
One of my favorite things I've seen recently was a post talking about the Unsullied Swordmasters and going, "Can you believe this is a 9-point unit?" And then proceeding to see two people post, "Yeah, they're undercosted," and then another one going, "Yeah, they're way overcosted,"
Yeah.
and they proceeded to have a conversation around each other, not realizing that they were trying to argue opposite points.
But yeah, and it turns out like any 9-point unit played poorly feels not so great, and you know, a unit played well can be, you know, very, very powerful. And man, the condition token resistance, even just in its own, is so great with them. I mean, and the 2+ the hit and the high dice pool and the I think that's amazing. It's fun thing is like, so do you guys ever have to sit down and like figure out like how the point? I mean, you obviously do. When you're building your units, how often do you have to sit down and like make lists with the point values just so it like works out? Like, do you ever get in a spot where you're like, hey, this doesn't work because like this is 9 points, this unit is 6 points, and like it somehow doesn't quite add up in enough ways to equal 40?
Well, so that comes from, again, designing factions uh, at the same time, you know, not just individual units.
Mhm.
So, you know, you can sit there and go like, okay, well, if someone wants to run, you know, 3 units of Unsullied Swordmasters, they can. That's going to be, you know, grand total of 36 points. So I hope they enjoy their one NCU option, unless they're running an NCU commander. So, you know, these are factored in. Versus, you know, dropping a unit by a single point. That same list now has access to 2 NCUs, and now things have changed up. So that's how much those little micro point balances and changes can, you know, have cascading impacts.
Jeez, that actually sounds like a nightmare. I that's the part I love, that you guys create this stuff and then you balance it, but the actual balancing of it, like that's got to be such a nightmare. I envisioning like you guys are, you know, Fabio's got his walls with like, you know, red string connecting the things and like charts
Pepe Sylvia.
everywhere. Yeah.
It looks a little bit more like a dungeon, you know, with the torture machines on the corners.
Sure, yeah.
TMI. Yeah. But yeah, people are going to be so excited for this. Obviously, you know, release dates, things like that we can't do. I don't know if Michael, you're still in Canada.
Oh yes, I am absolutely stuck up here for the foreseeable future. Well, not that I actually dislike Vancouver here or anything. I mean, I spend a third of my year up here anyway. It's just that now I don't have the option to leave even if I wanted to.
I don't mind staying inside my house and making videos and talking on the podcast, but when I'm told like, no, you have to now I'm like, well, now I want to go outside.
But
yeah,
outside.
that's a general life thing. When you're told you can't do something, then obviously you want to do that thing more than ever.
Exactly.
It's like I never want to leave my house usually, you know, and I stay in there most of the time, you know, working on things. But yet you tell me I can't, and all of a sudden it's like, you know, I really feel like going out and like biking for 20 miles today.
Madman. Is that when you have your? Do you have a certain like get into to like generate ideas? Is it like I go for a bike ride and I drink like a kale, I pound down a kale smoothie, and then like I have visions of like Belwas, the veteran pit fighter that.
Chase, did you just threaten me? Because it sounded like you just threatened me. But I'm going to answer that question with potentially, but it's nothing you really want me to talk about.
Okay. Oh gosh. Okay. Fair. And I know you guys you're working on some other creative processes together, right? You guys are working on both of you on the Bloodborne game. Is that something we can talk about or no?
Oh yeah, so that one's actually like wrapping up. Fabio is one of the developers on that, along with Leo Almeida, who's the lead developer on that.
Shout out to Leo.
Yep, shout out to Leo, our resident Hearthstone professional player as well.
Oh,
he's big in Brazil. But yeah, we've got a bunch of like, you know, because again, song is not our only thing. You know, we have still all the board games and everything that we work on, which has various levels of interactions depending on who's assigned to what project. But we definitely have some more exciting things for both of us together and independently that you guys will know of at some point in the future. Future's scary.
It's always cool you guys are working on so many projects, and that the stuff you're putting out for Song of Ice and Fire is awesome, and I'm sure Bloodborne's going to be amazing as well. So that'll be something just for everyone to keep on your radar. Well, guys, thank you so much for coming on the podcast. I really appreciate it. The Targaryen stuff looks phenomenal. It has probably lured me into another faction, and when I say another, I think I have all the factions, but Targaryens might be another one that I really invest in. Besides my free folk here, love what's coming out for them and how it looks like they're developing. So thanks so much for coming on, and yeah, stay safe, guys.
Yeah, definitely. You too.
And in the meantime, I hope you get your miniatures on the table. Oh, wait, now they've left, but they never showed us how to get out of here. And I think actually there's been some more stuff that's been revealed. We're going to have to follow up on this episode with more House Targaryen discussion on our next episode of On the Table Gaming. Thanks for listening, everybody. Special shout out to our Patreon supporters. Thanks for making this possible. We have a lot of fun, and we really appreciate your support. As I said earlier, I hope everyone's being safe and that you're getting your miniatures on the table.